a Belgium-based startup that built a generic sync engine that is able to sync data between many different cloud applications. We founded PySync back in 2012, launched the first version of our PySync sync engine in 2014, then started raising capital, started growing our team towards like 25, 30 people in 2019. And we had one big mission that is connecting the world's business apps. Back at PySync, we were really focused on syncing customer data between different systems. And HubSpot has been a connector on the platform since 2016. And quite quickly, the HubSpot connector started becoming one of the most popular connectors on the platform. And together with that, also the relationship between PySync and HubSpot, we just started meeting more and more HubSpot people, started getting in touch with HubSpot leadership. And over time, it just became clear that PySync joining HubSpot just would make a lot of sense. And that's what happened at the end of 2019. And that's also when my role started transitioning from a founder CEO role to a product management role. And our first goal has been to incorporate the PySync technology into HubSpot. And the result of that is, of course, Data Sync that got launched earlier this year.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction. It's been a very wild ride coming from PySync to Data Sync, and I'm actually happy that everyone from that team is still here, including you, Ewout. So that's definitely
amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And now Deal Sync has come along, which is a pretty big deal, right?
That's indeed a big deal. Yeah, super excited because Deal Sync is one of our biggest upcoming features, and also a feature that we were already chatting about years ago in the PySync office, even long before the acquisition by HubSpot, and a feature that took us years to build. Not just because Deal Sync in itself is a complex thing to build. Like our sync engine has always been very generic, so it didn't really matter if we were syncing contacts or companies or deals. But the one big step that we had to take when going from contacts to other objects was to also keep the association between different objects and sync. If you're just syncing contact data, it doesn't really matter how those contacts are getting synced to the other platform. Like they just get synced and are available in the other platform on their own. But as soon as you start syncing other objects like companies and deals, you really want to keep the association in sync. A deal that is linked to a certain contact and company on one side should also be linked to the same contact and company on the other side. And that has been a really big upgrade of our sync engine, like the ability to sync associations between objects. It's a really complex technical challenge. There's not so many sync solutions in the market that were able to really solve this issue. And I'm super proud to announce that over those years, we were able to figure out a really good solution for association sync. And Deal Sync is definitely the first result of that huge upgrade we've done in the sync engine. This feature didn't exist yet in the PySync standalone, so it's coming to Data Sync as a shiny new thing, and probably been the biggest feature request ever if we're looking at all the incoming feedback from customers over the past couple of years.
Yeah, and I can definitely vouch for that. You know, I used to be a support rep at PySync, and I got this question probably like 2 or 3 times a day, like people asking whether they could be able, or if they were able to sync deals. And we always had to kind of disappoint them and saying that, hey, it's coming sometime. We can only sync contacts and companies at this point. Sadly, it hasn't come to PySync, but it did come to HubSpot Data Sync particularly. So that's great news. And I'm so happy that as a community manager, I'm still will be in touch with all those customers who are now able to actually sync deals through the community, as opposed to being a support rep. So Deal Sync, when is it actually going live? Because it's not live at this moment, right?
No, it's not yet live. It's currently in a private beta, but we're going to start rolling it out gradually, starting off next week. I think somewhere like midweek, we'll like enable it for like 10% of HubSpot portals, and I will like ramp up the percentage over the next couple of weeks. But if anyone on the call is already interested to join right now, today, just let us know. Maybe share your portal ID in the chat, and we're happy to already give you access to Deal Sync. Maybe also like a couple of words around like the problem we're solving with Deal Sync, without going too much into details, because there will be an awesome demo later in this session. But what we've seen is that customers are looking to centralize all their data in HubSpot and bringing in deal data on top of their contact and company data. We've been chatting with a lot of customers over the past months and identified several good use cases that justify the need for a two-way deal sync. The first great use case is the one where customers are managing their sales data and other apps like Pipedrive, Soho, Dynamics. The other app is the source of truth for any sales data, and it's also where the sales reps are living. But yeah, many of those companies are using HubSpot to run marketing or even customer service. And by bringing in all the deal data, there's a lot of cool things you can do. For example, automating your sales process using HubSpot automation and HubSpot marketing campaigns. Also using HubSpot reporting features, revenue attribution on top of your sales data. Or, for example, providing better customer service. If you're chatting with a customer and you know exactly if this customer is a paying customer or not, or where he's currently sitting in the pipeline, you can really improve your customer conversations. So that's one important use case. And then the other use case is the use case where customers are currently still working in the other system to manage their sales pipeline, but they are interested to move over to Sales Hub. And by using Data Sync, you can just keep those two platforms running in parallel. Maybe for a couple of months, maybe some sales reps can already start using HubSpot, others can still use the other system. Data Sync will just keep all the data in sync real time, two-way, which will really help you have an easy transition from any other system onto HubSpot.
Cool. Yeah, let's not keep people waiting. Frans, would you mind giving a demo?
Oh, sure. I'm sharing there. You should be seeing the HubSpot Marketplace.
Yep.
All right. So we had a lot of first timers with regards to what data sync is, like let alone deal sync. Data sync is this the sync framework we've built and released a bunch of connectors that you can find in the HubSpot Marketplace. They're combined in a collection, but you'll also come across them automatically. Like if you were to search for NetSuite, because you're using NetSuite, you'll come across these data sync connectors. They're all grouped in this collection here. And a data sync app could look something like this. I'm going to be using, this is a very important note for this demo, I'm going to be using a CRM called Pipedrive. Now, maybe some of you are using Pipedrive, then it will be a super relevant demo, but it is actually very relevant for anybody. Even if you're using NetSuite, Zoho CRM, in fact, these are all the apps that we don't only support, we support a bunch more, but not every of these apps has a deal object, an opportunity object inside of them. These are the apps that will support deal sync. So these are mostly like the CRMs that we currently support. Now, I'm going to be using Pipedrive. I actually have my Pipedrive open right on the side here. It doesn't matter if you're using another app than Pipedrive, because what these screens, the flow, the setup looks exactly the same. That's the beauty of a data sync framework. So data sync allows you now to be synchronizing contacts, companies, and soon, or if you just drop your portal ID and deals as well. Now, here I've got a sync already running. I've got contact sync and company sync already running. Some apps may call this like leads or prospects. They may have like different names. Here I'm keeping it very simple. I've got a contact sync and a company sync running. What does that mean? Well, I've got my contacts right here. It's going to be the same contact that I have in Pipedrive. If I make a change on, say, actually, I noticed Aaron is in the audience here. If I make a change on Aaron by giving a phone number, or let's just call it Ronnie for the sake of it. Like that change, if you wait a while, that will actually like trigger a change, like data sync. Notice like, hey, something's changed, and this Aaron contact will actually change. It may take a minute or so for that change to take effect. We can actually see it here. It's like it says contact sync queued, and then we'll hopefully see this move into Ronnie. Everything's live here, so some things may actually like not work. Sometimes if a contact sync is queued, it's because like another app is taking precedence. But we'll see it change to Ronnie as we move along. That's what data sync currently entails. What does it look like inside? Well, very straightforward. You tell HubSpot what it needs to keep in sync. Does it need to keep all of my Pipedrive records in sync? Does it need to keep all of HubSpot's records in sync? Basically, I'm now I'm coining the phrase YOLO syncing, like whatever, just throw everything of my HubSpot in Pipedrive and everything in Pipedrive in HubSpot. I don't really care. It is recommended though to be, especially if you're a first timer, to be working off of these things called like a sync inclusion list, where on the HubSpot side, you create a list, defining a couple of key contacts that you want to like see how these contacts behave in my other app. So you point towards a filtered list there. On the Pipedrive side, you would do the same. Maybe any contact that you've given a test label or a test contact on the basis of email address. You can sort of play around with these filters. And then what's really important is, of course, as these contacts move over from one side to the other, what field mappings do they get? That's the idea of data sync. Now, this is happening with a contact sync here. It's happening with a company sync, very similar principle. And we're now going to be doing a deal sync as well. So deal sync is available as an option here. Here's, by the way, Aaron, who's renamed to Ronnie. So deal sync, sort of, if you've already seen contact sync, company sync, this follows a slightly different pattern for deal syncing, because deals are a little bit of a different object, kind of. First off, we're going to be thinking about the sync direction very clearly, very specifically sync direction. We do offer two-way sync, which is mind-blowing from a technological perspective, to be able to synchronize two deal pipelines completely with one another. It's mind-blowing. Now, we're probably predicting most folks would want to do this, a one-way sync, because if you're using Pipedrive, well, that's really your sales is CRM. So you've got your sales reps working on deals inside of Pipedrive. Now, let's consider for this example here, we are a company, sort of seller and manufacturer of customizable Christmas balls, right? So here's what we sell. So we would have a pipeline that would, let me see what this, I should actually get this view, this pipeline view with like different stages. First, to show the customer the balls, then you touch the balls, feels like it's good material. You send them a quote, and if they like what they see, you either win or lose it, right? That's your very basic pipeline. And we've got a couple of deals already brewing. We may already have a couple of won deals. Those won deals would show up in here, like they would be cleared of the view. Now, HubSpot, I have my deal view here. Actually, in my pipeline here, I'm sort of already working in HubSpot at the same time, doing some test deals here. So, but maybe I'm still new to HubSpot, right? So these deals are just tests, and most of my current deals are still in Pipedrive. Well, in that case, you'll want to just probably make it a one-way sync. You're kind of thinking, okay, I'm going to continue using HubSpot for my marketing, and it would just be way better if my marketing can adapt on activity happening on those deals. Like if a contact is in a deal, maybe that person needs to be getting different marketing sent to. So basically bringing in the deals. Now, for the sake of this demo, we can make it two-way because, well, why not actually have those test deals also fly over in Pipedrive? It's up to you. It also determines like what changes will propagate to one side to the other. That's sync direction. So that's one question to be wondering about. Then the other is, well, pipelines. A deal, and we've seen this in plenty of apps, they are always part of a pipeline. In HubSpot, that's the case. You can have multiple pipelines. Everybody actually starts off with this default sales pipeline. I've created, for the sake of this demo, a dedicated Pipedrive pipeline, but just as like Pipedrive as well, you can create multiple pipelines. Then again, there are certain apps where there's only one simplified pipeline. Pipelines are super important. You can't have a deal without actually an association with that a certain pipeline. And then within that pipeline, you pass through a couple of stages, like it's from beginning to closed won or closed lost. And it's super important to be mapping that out. That's probably the biggest thing around deal sync, actually setting up your pipeline mappings. So you have to define, as I'm bringing over these Pipedrive deals, what pipeline should they land into? Well, they can land into both. I can be mapping multiple pipelines. I know I want for sure to have them land in my Pipedrive pipeline. If I happen to have other deals, I could be mapping another pipeline as well. I'm going to be choosing my Pipedrive pipeline. Now, it's already these deal stages are following sort of a similar-ish nomenclature, which is great. You can go ahead and either map them yourself, but it's 2021 and we're all lazy. So we invented an auto map feature, which is basically doing some text lookup and mapping these up. I will do a quick sanity check here to see if that is correct. Indeed, everything's mapped out nicely. Now, sometimes it could be that not everything gets detected because it may be spelled somewhat different. So you'll then want to make sure you do explicitly map this. If you don't map it, if you don't allocate a certain deal stage, it will not sync those deals sitting in that stage. So also interestingly, and this is basically how different apps work, right? In HubSpot, when a deal is won, well, it moves to a certain stage, closed won. That's not the case in Pipedrive. Pipedrive is a different app where you have stages, and if it's closed won, well, you can basically move it from this stage and you can drop it into one bucket and then it'll be won. It doesn't really move to closed won. It stays in that stage, but it gets like a status won. Well, here we are always going to be like working off of the HubSpot framework. This is my field mapping. Now, you could be mapping other pipelines. We're going to keep it relatively simple. Could be applying a secondary filter. If you don't really want all of these to come over, you could be choosing like a separate filter. A reason, for instance, why you would want to set up such a filter is, and I'm going to scroll a little bit further here. As you look at this feature here, well, it's actually more of an information box. Duplicate prevention, we're not really going to be matching existing deals. So if first, and we know a lot of you are doing this already, like how do you get these deals currently without data sync? How do you get these deals into HubSpot? Well, you can either export them and then import them, which is great fun. People would have set up a Zapier to send these over. So it is likely that you may already have some deal activity, some deals stored in HubSpot that you know are coming from another tool. And now you're finding data sync and you're thinking, well, this is going to do it all automatically for me. Well, be aware that as we sync them over, we will just basically sync all of them over. And we will not detect, oh, this deal happened to already exist, right? So we'll basically merge it in. No, we'll just sync everything over. So that's where a filter could come in if you want to avoid those deals from syncing in. I would also recommend, if you know you have a lot of deals already living inside of HubSpot, just create a net new pipeline, see how those synced in deals start behaving. And if you like what you see, just delete those old zapped in deals if you're confident that data sync is the way to go. So that's a filter. Data conflicts will basically occur if you're making a change on a deal in the on the very same moment. Of course, if it's a one-way sync anyhow, there are not going to be conflicts. It's always going to follow Pipedrive's lead. That's basically what this page shows you. But just as with any object, we do want to look at field mappings. We give you a bunch of default field mappings, such as like what's the name of that deal, what's current value, currency, and here's these associations that Ewout was raving about. And truly, these are a magnificent work of art, having these associations come along with it. I'm going to complete this with the expected close date, which I do want to sync over. Since we are selling Christmas balls, I have this thing where I'm storing the number of colors that are needed. Like for instance, for selling to the Juventus football team, we need 2 colors, named black and white. So we're storing that on a numerical value. So I'm going to map that over as well. When a deal closes in Pipedrive, that stores, this is basically me knowing very well how Pipedrive works. And if you're working with a different tool, you know what is really important for your opportunity. So this is basically me determining, well, what do I need? Well, I know when a deal gets won, that gets stored in a specific time value. I'm going to bring that over. When a deal gets lost, that also gets stored in a specific value. I'm going to bring that over as well. I've basically created obviously these properties prior. Right? I see there's a field called deal description. Well, maybe that's actually interesting. Do I have that property in PyDrive? I can go on completing these field mappings. Then again, I don't have to be complete. I'm actually happy as it is. I'm going to go ahead and save this. If I think of other field mappings later on, well, sure enough, I'll add them in. Here you can see a deal being added here. Well, sure enough, that's my deal coming over from HubSpot. And boom, there we go. There's my deals coming over from PyDrive. Actually, a lot of close loss deals that you didn't see, but you did see in this view here, right? There's like these very special balls, nice balls. All of those we're finding in the close loss table. That's they're basically in this view here. And my other deals got synced over with the amount, with the close date, and this is how HubSpot shows associations, right? So the associations of the contacts that were in here also got synced over. That's pretty cool. Now, important to note, in order for these associations to come over, you do want to have that sync running right now. So I've got this contact and the company sync running separately, which is helping these associations to come over. We're probably going to even work on that to make it a little bit more straightforward, so that you don't necessarily have to have them actively running. But right now, you do need to have them running for those contacts as well as company associations to come over. Now, this is deal sync. I'm pretty stoked of seeing like deals now that I know are happening in PyDrive. I can now see them in HubSpot. We just did a deal sync. If I move this over into, this is a PyDrive deal, I could be moving it into here, and so I've moved it into send quote. So I've moved rubber balls into send quote, and that we should be expecting that deal to move over on the other side as well. Like we can actually monitor this in our sync settings here. So we've got different things queued up. It's going to go through the contact sync, deal sync, and basically it's going to keep up all the time with whatever changes I make. That's deal sync. Did you like that, Jan? Did you like that, Ewout?
Yeah, I just noticed that rubber balls made it over.
Yeah, rubber balls is there. It's lightning fast.
But I have one question though. Did Aaron's name ever change?
It did. I told. Yeah. I look at the recording.
I might have missed it. Okay, cool. It was very satisfying to see all those deals pop up in PyDrive or HubSpot. I forget, but that was very satisfying to see. Cool. Also, very just kudos for the very creative test data.
I'm feeling Christmassy. I mean, Christmas coming up, right? Gotta sell them balls.
While we're giving kudos, Jan, Anna is also on the call. Anna is our amazing designer who made the whole deal sync design. If you like it, give a shout out to Anna.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna's amazing. Cool. Maybe one more question before we hand it off to the audience, and feel free to put any questions you may have in the chat box. But I have just one more question, which is, what is kind of what are the main use cases that you're trying to solve for here, Frans? How do you see people using this?
Well, it's going to be used in a variety of ways. Because of us actually offering a two-way sync, there's a numerous amount of use cases, especially also with different apps being supported. The main takeaway is that as these deals that are living in another tool can now make it over in a very easy fashion over into HubSpot, like so, it's basically making these deals behave as first-class citizen data. That's a fancy way of saying, well, I can now leverage the great automation that I have in HubSpot, the segmentation that I have in HubSpot, and I can do it in a much more nuanced way because I have direct access to the deal data that's living in another tool. We had this before with contacts and companies. That's great, but there's still this degree of nuance that that you can only capture on top of the deal object. Let me show you a couple of consequences of syncing in a deal. So lifecycle stage is obviously a very important property that HubSpot stores on the contact. Now, if you scroll back in the recording, you will have seen that all of these were like stored as a subscriber, except for one, which was a test deal. Now, the lifecycle stage has actually been bumped to opportunity. And in fact, if an opportunity were to go to closed won, it would even make that lifecycle stage go to customer. That is some sort of like under the hood HubSpot magic. Well, it's under the hood. It's tied to a setting, which you can find here. So under the deals settings in HubSpot, I'm in HubSpot, but essentially this setting here, which syncs lifecycle stages, like it's mind blowing to think, but I'm actually controlling a Pipedrive setting. I'm in HubSpot setting, but I'm really controlling a Pipedrive setting here, which is when a Pipedrive deal is created, change the lifecycle stage of associated contacts and companies to opportunity, which we can see it has done. When a deal is won in Pipedrive, right, then those contacts and companies will move into the customer. That's mind blowing. That's awesome. That allows you to create those lists with much greater precision. It allows you to set up workflows with much greater precision. Think about the. Let's actually go into my deals settings. Actually, I have my deal settings up here. So this basically deal settings is where you define the pipeline stages. Well, sure enough, you've got this automate tab. Because you've got those deals living in here, you can directly create workflows off of stages happening in Pipedrive. Like say when a quote is being sent to a customer. So you've showed them the balls, they've touched the balls. Now it's time to send them an actual quote of like, this is what it's going to cost. Well, as that happens, as the deal hits that stage, well, what I'm doing here is updating a company property as well as an associated contact property to just say, okay, check a box, lock the price. These, when these customers or companies, or when we're sending them pricing materials, we got to be aware that they've already received the quote. Like it's just updating a property. When a deal reaches closed won, I'm doing some magic with that closed won date time, like updating a couple of other properties in HubSpot, just to build up my reporting. This is workflows, automation built off of the trigger of a deal. But you can also build off workflows off of a contact trigger. So for instance, when somebody's been in contact with a sales rep, right? And we've allowed them to touch a Christmas ball to see like what velvet feels like or whatever, we can enroll them in a sequence because maybe we want to send them a CSAT survey on, hey, how did you like your interaction with said sales rep? We could not do this before, or well, you could do it, but you would have to really hook up your Zapier processes in a very clever way. And I mean, Zapier is not always that comfortable, right? It's always a bit of trial and error. Here, you're really working with like this declarative way of setting that up, which I really find much more enjoyable than working with like these trigger action systems to actually get data synchronized. I'm just like working off of Pipedrive data or NetSuite data or a Dynamics opportunity inside of HubSpot. Sorry to be like super evangelizing about this, but this gets me really, really stoked.
Don't apologize, Frans. I think it's amazing, like the passion that you show. But like to kind of sum up, I think it's also like so awesome how easy and clear some of the processes have become instead of like using or working with third-party apps, like you said, like Zapier, and having to rely on trial and error. It's all just in HubSpot now, and so clear for everyone to find and to document.
But people can still work with Zapier or Integromat. I mean, those are still fine. The thing is, if you just now you can rely on data sync to make sure that the actual object sits there, that you don't have to set up a Zap to make sure that the object sits there, and that you don't have to think about Zaps that say, okay, the deal has changed, so that's my trigger. So the amount has changed. Oh, that's another Zap. The deal, some of the deal properties, I think that's another Zap. No, the object sits there. Zapier can still maybe transform some of your data across apps. That's fine. But at least you can now use your Zaps more economically, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're at halfway through, I think. Let's hand it over to you, the audience. Feel free to unmute or put your questions in the chat. We're happy to take them.
Yeah, there's already a first question there, Jan, in the chat around ownership syncing. Super interesting question.
Yeah.
You're right that today we're not yet syncing the owner fields. So a deal that gets owned by Frans and Pipedrive, for example, if the deal comes over to HubSpot, it will not automatically get owned by Frans and HubSpot yet. That's another big update that's coming to the sync engine. Should be there, yeah, very soon. Like development is going on. It's another step that we need to take in the engine because we need to be able to match users between two different systems. So owner sync definitely coming, and once it's there, it will be available for contact sync, company sync, and deal sync.
All right, that's good news. Also, like one of the top questions we got at PySync. We have another question by Sharon. Will this work with price FX? I assume that's an application. Frans, maybe I haven't heard of it. Maybe Frans has.
Yeah, well, Google has heard of it, of course. It's pricing, it's pricing solution. So I'm imagining this would be external software in which you are actually setting up opportunities and or sending quotes. So will it work with price effects? No, it will not, because price effects is unfortunately not yet one of the apps that we support directly with data sync. I'm actually just going to quickly look on the marketplace if there is another, because HubSpot is not the only party making integrations.
Yeah, well, while you're looking at Frans, maybe good to remind everyone that today data sync is supporting like more than 60 different applications, and a ton more apps are coming. Like by end of the year, there will be a ton more apps available in the marketplace. And I think somewhere on the community or IDs forum, you can vote for your favorite apps. So if an app is not yet available, just go to our IDs fora and just give your app, the app you want, a vote, and it will definitely get prioritized by giving those votes.
Can confirm price effects is actually not even on the HubSpot Marketplace yet. That doesn't mean it won't make for a good candidate. So we're happy to hear the suggestion. We're taking it down. Do note that us building an integration does take some time. APIs need to check out. So it needs to be prioritized. But if everything looks okay, we can sure consider building price effects. And to answer the question in a more generic way, even. We are now, since we now have this new object that is syncable for any new app, we will automatically start considering, well, what objects can we sync? But previously we were always limited, like it was a contact or a company thing. Right now, we're always also going to ask ourselves the question, well, is there an opportunity object living inside of this app? Sure enough, we'll build it, right? It's gonna come as a given.
Cool. There was another question by Kevin. How about closest last reason from Pipedrive to HubSpot? I assume that's the case.
Yeah, it's actually field mapping. It's basically just you define it in field mapping. Close lost reasons, close won reasons show up as a field mapping, as a property, I should say, on the deal record. And we see this generally play out in different apps. There is one exception that I think of, which is ConnectWise, where the close lost reason is like stored actually in a deal stage. But even so, you can bring it over, right? If the idea is we need to bring this over, I haven't come across an app where we can't bring over the close lost reason.
Cool. So which apps will be supported? I mean, we were talking about apps, so I was just wondering, like, will there be a list somewhere where people can find?
I can actually let me share screen again here. I can't really show it yet, but making sure I'm sharing the right one. So this is showing the marketplace, right? So if you look up any app like Pipedrive, say, if on any listing, you will see which objects are being kept in sync. Now, because we haven't officially launched deal sync yet, it doesn't literally show that deals are being synced yet. But sure enough, once we roll it out, it will be indicated that deals, as they're called in Pipedrive, will be here. And this is basically the place where you can see if it will sync or not.
Okay, so people can just look up their app as of next week, I think, and it'll show there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we can share the list of apps that we already know of in the chat. I'll do that right away.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there you go.
There we go, indeed.
And this is, I mean, I'm actually thinking of like an app called. There's an app called Exact online, which is accounting software, very popular in Belgium and the Netherlands. It's going to be. I know we're releasing it in a couple of weeks' time. Actually, we're already beta testing it. It has an opportunities object, but the opportunities object, we're basically working on that still. It's like this list. I mean, it's correct now, but it won't be correct next week. So like it's
as with everything with data sync, it's quickly evolving. Like more and more apps coming almost
and
every
let us
week.
know. I mean, this is very much a place where we welcome feedback, where we welcome, hey, we want to hear from you what we should be building.
There's also a question about Apollo. Apollo is not yet available. I think there's an IDs forum thread as well. So if you click that link, maybe we can even share the direct.
Yeah, Apollo, I do think Apollo has they have their own integration built with HubSpot, which is not on the marketplace. They have their own integration, but as long as there is not really like a true data sync integration, it won't yet be compatible with anything happening in Apollo.
I'm kind of just waiting for questions to come in. Feel free to unmute yourself or just put them in the chat.
I ungated Priya. I remember Priya also has to be ungated to see deal sync. So I've ungated.
I think Priya just asked a question. She's amazed to see how deal sync works, but just to check with you, we are a healthcare company where we have access to patient data from all over the world. I assume that in this case, I'm not sure how well we can take this process forward in our organization, but we're still babies in using HubSpot. Do you suggest any educational webinars from HubSpot like this one we had today? That's a good question. I'm always trying to set up events like these where we kind of, try to teach people how to set up things, but we are also doing a data sync hangout. I think we haven't really set a date yet, but it's mostly something that me and Frans set up. So feel free to, join the community we have here. I'll put a link in the chat to this community if you're not sure where it is. Where we have a lot of events planned in the next coming weeks to close off Q4. So be sure to visit that occasionally, so you are up to date on any new data sync, particular data sync events.
We should do a shout out to the HubSpot Academy too, right? I mean, other than live webinars, where obviously we're live
Absolutely.
here answering questions, the HubSpot Academy is a great amount. It's a great bunch of resources that you can watch asynchronously. There's tests. We're working on like things that specifically relate to syncing, to the whole RevOps community. So, but already the HubSpot Academy. If you call yourself a HubSpot baby, I mean the HubSpot Academy is a perfect place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing place, and there's a revenue operations certificate coming real soon as well. So if you're looking to ramp up on that in that field particularly, that's definitely something to look forward to.
Yeah, if folks want to see deal sync play out in an app of their choosing, I can always quickly try to show what the settings look like in another app. I do have access to a couple of sandboxes. I just especially like Pipedrive since it updates in real time. And other apps will update in the real time. I mean, you'll have a maximum delay of 5 minutes of a change happening in the other app. because we're actually just polling. We're knocking on the other app's door every 5 minutes to see if there's any changes. If a deal changes in HubSpot, it syncs instantaneously.
There's an interesting question by Kevin. How, well, you can read it for yourself, but is duplicate deal handling on the roadmap? Otherwise, setting up a new sales pipeline requires purchasing Sales Hub. I'm not sure, how does it handle with other hubs particularly?
So regarding the roadmap, for contacts and companies, we were always able to choose one particular field that we could use for matching. Like for contacts, pretty obvious, we use email address, and that's a good identifier to match contacts on. So we'll never create contacts with the same email address. For deals, it's a little bit more tricky. Like just using deal name can be a bit dangerous. Like there's not one field available for us to really match on. On the data sync roadmap is definitely the functionality of doing more advanced mapping. Like there's probably some AI algorithms that we can use to match data instead of just looking at one field. So I can definitely see us improving on that area in the future, but probably not in the near future. So yeah, for now, indeed, it's important to know that deals are not being matched between systems just because there's not a really good identifier that we could use there.
And I guess to address the point from another angle, let me quickly share screen again. Because I've been playing around with this, let me just make sure I'm sharing HubSpot. So as you're synchronizing deals in, right? You saw me run this sync. So imagine I already had a bunch of deals because say you only have the one pipeline, so you don't really have more bandwidth to play around with. Even if you turn on that sync, put them all in the same pipeline, you do have a clear way to determine, well, what's the result of the sync? Well, you can literally see at what, like, these were basically all the things that came over from my sync. So I can clearly filter on the data synced deals. And I would then also see the other deals, right? In the that I don't particularly care for anymore. So you can do your cleanup even in the same pipeline. There's ways to filter on it. It does require some cleanup, but it's basically a one-time cleanup though, right? Once you've got data sync running, it's smooth sailing from there.
All right. I'm just waiting for some other questions. I know that Ewout wanted to also ask, actually, like turn the tables a little bit and ask you guys anything. So if no other questions are coming in, I'm happy to let Ewout talk for a bit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, with data sync, we're in the middle of our 22 roadmap planning exercise. So really exciting times. We're just looking at all the possible features that we can build and trying to prioritize them based on incoming feedback. Definitely wanted to hear your input on our roadmap as well. One big next step for us is to just build the next set of objects. Like we have contacts, companies, deals available, and we'll definitely, we won't stop there. We'll just keep adding more objects. Like we can go into the e-commerce space, start syncing product information, invoice, order information. We can go into the more marketing use case, syncing timeline events, or a sales use case, syncing engagements between systems like notes, calls, tasks, meetings. Or even customer service, syncing tickets between different systems. Would definitely love your input. If you have any specific object that you want to see us build next, feel free to put it in the chat or just send us an email or let us know through the community. And maybe, I don't think we discussed pricing yet, Jan. Pricing
That's
for
right.
deal sync.
That's right.
Yeah, let me quickly share my screen. So the good news, deal sync will just become available for free, just as contact sync and company sync. So I'm here on the Operations Hub pricing page. Data sync is considered an Operations Hub feature, but we're mainly living in the free tier. So anyone with a free HubSpot account can access most of the data sync features, like basically all the ones that are listed here. It's only the custom field mappings that are paid feature. So Frans showed you in the demo, we always try to map the most typical fields as default fields. But as soon as you want to add your custom data in the mix, you would probably need custom field mappings. And custom field mappings are living on the starter tier. No, that's only a $45 a month on the yearly plan and $50 on the monthly plan. And for that same price, you can buy the entire starter suite, which also includes Sales Hub, Marketing Hub, and so on. So yeah, pretty good deal. And again, most of the functionality on the free tier, so you can connect as many apps as you want, sync as many deals as you want. As long as you don't need custom field mappings, it will be a 100% free feature.
Awesome. I'm giving it, like, we're almost at time, so I'm giving you guys one last chance to ask any questions for Ewout and Frans. And if I don't see any questions coming in, we are going to probably call it and call it a night as well, because it's almost 6 p.m. here in Belgium.
I can't wait personally to see how our users will start leveraging this functionality. I mean, we already know lots of users are already synchronizing deals in, but they're using some quite complex mechanisms. Often it's like an outsourced partner that sort of builds things inside of HubSpot, which, don't get me wrong, they work, but they are quite cumbersome, and it's not always that transparent to like do some self-maintenance on this. So this gives our users a direct means to set up those deal syncs. So we're really stoked to see what you guys will come up with.
I can imagine. And I don't see any questions coming into the chat, so I guess we'll call it here. Thanks everyone for coming over, and then hearing these two wonderful people talk. Ewout, Frans, thank you very much for being here and joining us in the community. The recording for this event will be made available tomorrow in this community post here. Also, if you have any feedback for me or for us in general, or if you have any questions about data sync and deal sync in the future, feel free to put it there. Give us an upvote there if you liked this event. And thanks again for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you very shortly. Thanks very much, and see you next time.
Bye.
Thank you, Jan. See you all.
Thanks.